blessing,
amazing,
for better or worse,
richer or poorer.
in sickness and in health,
And with God's help, we learn to live happily ever after.
All right. Well, good morning. It's good to see you guys this morning. Beautiful day outside. Sun is shining bright, and a little spring kind of teasing us a little bit this week. I have a feeling it's going to change some, but that's okay because we've still got a little ways to go, and it'll happen. But Easter is in the air, and time is coming, and the flowers are starting to bloom, and that makes you think of love, doesn't it? It's just that time of year. It happens in school. We have to kind of start looking and going, hey, leave room for Jesus. Leave room for Jesus. That's what we do. And so it's part of that time. But we started a relationship series. This is week number 3, and and I know for some of you it's like, oh, awesome! You ladies are like, this is great. We've been looking forward to this, and some of you guys are like, I liked him, I really did. But now it's like, I don't know when this is going to end, but I'll be back. I hope you're hanging around. I hope it's okay, and I hope it hasn't caused too much rift at home. It's not intended to do that. A lot of the things that we're talking about over these past weeks is designed to be conversation starters, to get you to a place where you can begin to communicate with your spouse, and hopefully to make your marriage stronger. If you're not in a marriage, and it's like, well, who you? I mean, I'm not here. Well, you may be in a place of preparation. Maybe it's in a time. Maybe God has you in a place of singleness, or maybe you are young and you just haven't gotten to that place yet. And just bear with us, because a lot of these concepts seem foreign to you. Because listen, I've sat across the desk and I've been doing this for a long, long time. And every time somebody comes and says we're going to get married, then they are just in love. Okay, they are so in love, and all these things happen. And I was talking to Pastor Troy a few weeks ago about premarital counseling and some of the things that we do, and he said, what I've done is, he said, when I've counseled people that have gone through difficult challenges and hard situations, and even those that have gotten divorced, he said, I have taken those questions and those interviews and those things, and I have a list of questions. And that's what I give to couples before they are going to get married. I just give them this list of questions and say, this is what's caused problems that I've seen for 20 years. Here's some conversation starters. And so it just happens. And the reason for this is simply this. We want living faith, okay, and all Christian marriages to be strong. Because we live in a very tough culture right now. We live in a culture that would not be supportive of what we believe is the idea of marriage. And so we want the outside world to look at us and say, that's what we want. That's a model for what we see. And so we want our marriages and we want our families to have happy couples who live happily ever after. And that's the whole purpose of this. And this is a whole lot of collection of things that I have gathered over the years, and different things that I kind of have shared as we've gone through this. And we started a few weeks ago with this relationship series, talking about the fact that we come into our relationships with kind of an imaginary box. Okay, and that box is all of our hopes, all of our dreams, and all of our desires. Okay, and maybe you didn't, just say, I'm going to put this hope in, or I'm going to put this dream in, or I'm going to put this desire in, but you just have this collection of things. You have this idea in your mind, you have this vision, if you will, of what you want your life to look like, and so you have this kind of, these dreams and desires, and all of these things kind of come together, and this is how this works. When we are looking for a relationship, we are not thinking how we become the perfect someone for someone else, okay? You don't go somewhere and say, she is really pretty, and I wonder how I can become the best husband that she needs, okay? That's not what we do. And she don't come and say, he is so good looking, and so I wonder how I can become the wife he's looking for, okay? No, you go looking for Mr. Right, and she goes looking for, and so that's how that works. And so we look for that person who's going to fulfill our dream. We look for that person who is perfect for us. We don't think in reverse of how we can become the perfect person for the other one. And that's a challenge for you. And we talked about how that can happen. And so what happens is we bring this box to the altar. We bring this box with us to the marriage. We bring all of our hopes, dreams, and desires into the marriage. And then at some point in time, we hand that box to our spouse. We hand it over. The problem is when they receive that box of our hopes, our dreams, and our desires, it doesn't feel so happy, okay? It doesn't feel like a box of hopes, dreams, and desires. Instead of it feels like a box of expectations and a box of responsibilities, and it can become burdensome. And you may never really know when this happens because it's not a physical thing that you do. It's not, here's my box and here I want you to do this, but this just happens. And when that becomes the case, and when we come into that conflict, there's one of four things that we're going to do. And the first is the most radical. We leave. We just look and say, I don't know, I didn't sign up for this. This is not what I signed up for. That you're not who I thought you were. You know, who are you and how did you get in my house, okay? Because you're not the person that I thought I married, and I'm out of here. And then we take our box and we leave. Well, if that doesn't happen, then the next thing that can happen is we win. And there's usually a stronger personality in the relationship. And it's like, honey, look at my box, okay? Who would not want this? I mean, look at the design of this. I mean, this is a beautiful design. Look at, this is the house that I want. These are the kids that I want. This is what they're going to do. This is where we're going to go to school. This is the job we're going to have. This is what you're going to wear, okay? And this is what you're going to look like, and this is how you're going to keep yourself, and this is how this all is going to... And see, why would you not? It's healthy, okay? This is the way to... it's more healthy, and so we usually have a stronger personality. It's like, come on. And so we win. And what happens when you have one person in the relationship who wins, someone conforms. Okay, you win. We'll live out of your box. And the side part of that is what so many couples kind of settle into. And some of you may have come into this relationship series a couple weeks ago when I threw this up there and said, well, isn't that what it's supposed to be? I mean, that's how we live our life. You know? You can go the distance. You can live in a compromised relationship and you can go the distance. You can go 50, 60, 70 years. I know couples. Okay, you can go the distance. You can go all the way because it's like, but this is the danger of that. Okay, the danger of the compromise is these expectations, and in the compromise, it creates a debtor relationship. And as we said last week, how much gratitude do you give to somebody that pays you what they owe you? Okay? And so if you're in a compromised relationship and it's like, okay, this is what you owe me, and then this is what I owe you. So I owe you, you owe me, and we keep a tab on things, okay? We keep a track. We track it. And look, you're behind and you're part of the compromise, all right? So you need to come on up with your end of the deal. And so we get into this debt-debtor relationship, and when we're in a debt-debtor relationship, how much gratitude do you show to someone who pays you what they owe you? You see, it's not God's design for marriage. It's not God's design for oneness. It's a you owe me and I owe you. And here's the thing. This is the question I challenged you with last week. To ask your spouse this question, okay? And to go into this thing. Asking yourself, what do I owe you and what do you owe me? And so if you ask yourself this question, what do they owe you? What do they owe you? I'm going to give you the good answer for that. Nothing. Okay? You don't owe me nothing. And you're like, I don't know about that. You see, because that is the secret that happy couples know. That is the secret that happy couples understand. Happy couples know the answer to the question, what do I owe you? And that answer is nothing. They owe each other everything, but they expect nothing in return. So that doesn't make any sense. You owe each other everything, but you expect nothing in return. It doesn't make any sense. Exactly right. Happy couples don't make sense. Okay? There's something about it that doesn't make sense. There's a love there. There's a desire there that is beyond comprehension. We'll get to that here in just a moment. Okay? It's a love that baffles us. And this is what we came to last week that helped us to understand where this idea comes from. When Jesus was coming to the end of his ministry, when he was coming to the end of his time on earth, one of the last things that he did with his disciples was he gathered them together in the upper room. He gathered them in this place to celebrate with them the Passover meal. And as he gathered them there, he did something and said something that was so radical, okay, that any Jewish men that heard what he said at this table would have just gotten up, offended, and left the room. okay? And this is what he said, okay? And right before John, write this down, okay? And in John 13:34, he wrote it down. We have it. This is what he said. And this is what it's so offensive. You may not have ever thought about this before. A new command I give you. Now, wait a minute. Where did the commands come from? You know where the commands come from. Moses, right? Where did Moses get them from? God. He couldn't even look at him, okay? He went on the mountain. God wrote them with the finger of God on the tablets. Moses brought them back. They put them in the Ark of the Covenant, and they kept this in the Holy of Holies, the law, the command. And here's Jesus sitting at the table. And this is what he says to these Jewish men. A new command I give you. Wait a minute. The only person who can issue commands is God, to which Jesus would have said, same finger. Listen, guys. This is what he said to them. Love one another. To which they would have replied, that's nothing new. That's nothing new. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. That's not anything new. And he would have said, but I'm not through. As I have loved you. And he could have went around the table, couldn't he? He could have went around the table. Hey, Matthew. Hey, buddy. Remember when I met you? Yeah, you do, don't you? Yeah, you were a tax collector. Yeah, you were an embarrassment to your family. You were an embarrassment to your home and your community and all your brothers. And hey, remember when I met you? You were in the tax collector's booth even. Matthew, come on, dude. What did I say to you? What did I say to you? Follow me. Yeah, I did. Peter, you were there. What was you thinking? I know what you were thinking, weren't you? Yeah, not him. That guy's lower than low. I mean, we've got sinners, and then we've got tax collectors down here. Okay? I know what you were thinking. And then we invited them all over to your house and all of his tax collector friends. I know what you were thinking. I know what you were thinking. Oh, hey, Nathaniel. Remember when you met me? Remember when they invited you? Remember what you said? I know what you said. Yeah, you were dissing my hometown, weren't you? Nazareth? Anything good come out of Nazareth? Nathaniel, come on. What did I tell you? What did I tell you? You know what I told you? Yeah, follow me. He could have went around the room. He could have went around the room. Love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. And he knew what he was about to do. He knew where he was about to go, that he was about to leave that place, that he was about to go out, and that he was about to be arrested, he was about to be crucified, and he was about to be killed. You see, you've heard of the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You see, this is kind of like the platinum rule, okay? The platinum rule is treat others the way God treated you through Christ. And what did he do? He died for you. He died for you. That's what he did. He's, look, I knew where you were at. I knew what you were going to do. Hey, Peter, come on, dude. I know what you're getting ready to do later on. And I'm still going to die for you, man. He could have went around the room. And he knew what he was about to do. He knew what it was about to mean. He knew what was going to happen. Listen. In relationships, when we come to a place where we don't know what to say, when we don't know what to do, remember this, okay? Just remember this. When you're at a place where you don't know what to say and you don't know what to do, just love like God, who through Christ loved you. You see, as I have loved you, you must love one another. This is the hinge of Christianity. This is what it sets on. This is the foundation in which it all rests. Everything that you study in the New Testament, every suggestion, law, command, everything that's given, everything that Paul writes, everything that Peter writes, everything that's there goes back to this idea. It comes back to this moment when Jesus said, love one another as I have loved you. Paul tells us every relationship, we take our cue from Christ. Because he takes this, and in Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 2, we looked at this. He says, walk in the way of love. Walk in the way of love. This is Paul's letter. And it says, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and a sacrifice to God. See, here's the thing. What does that look like? What does that look like in marriage? What does that look like in relationship? I mentioned this to you last week, and when we apply this to marriage, this is what it looks like. It looks like a submission competition, okay? A submission competition is a race to the back of the line, and Baptists struggle with that, okay? Especially at potlucks, all right? All right? When we have a potluck, it's like, oh yeah, okay, you guys go right on ahead, okay? Because when you come in, you know what it's like. You kind of gauge the crowd, you kind of gauge the table, you got a few more people there than you thought were going to come, and you're the last one in line. You're like, man, them sweet potatoes probably were good. Oh, man, it'd been nice to have had a piece of ham, but that's okay. I like dark meat cold turkey. That'll be good. We'll just get some of that. You see? You know what that's like. It's not too appetizing. It's like, I mean, come on, Baptist pastors, we can pray and walk. We can pray and walk to the front of the line to bless a meal. You've seen it, okay? It's hard to go to the back of the line. But a submission competition is what God calls us to in marriage. And it sounds miserable, and not very many people try it. But those who do, let me tell you something. They enjoy it. Look at this. Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 22. Let's read this and look at this a moment. Wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as you do the Lord. It's pretty black and white, isn't it? Let's pray and we'll get out of here, okay? All right? Some of you ladies are like, what? What? Listen, come on. Some of you, this really bothers you, okay? And for some people, this is why they left church. For some people, this is why they don't even go anymore. It's like, this bothers me. Well, let's tease this out a little bit. Let me talk to you a little bit about this. This verse that we throw around a lot, Ephesians 5:22. Wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as you do the Lord. And here's the thing. When you take the oldest Greek manuscripts where this is written, this is what it looks like. In the oldest Greek manuscripts, this is what it says. It says, wives, to your own husbands as to the Lord. You're thinking, wait a minute, something's missing. Wives, to your own husbands as to the Lord. And you're saying, well, the word submit is missing. Yes, it is. And let me tell you why. Because in the first century culture, that was a given. Okay? To Paul's audience at the church of Ephesus that he was writing this to, this would not be a huh, this would be a duh. Okay? Because listen, now I'm not saying that this is, but you just need to understand the culture. This is a history lesson. Okay? In the first century culture, women were considered as property. Okay? And the problem with that is when you're considered property, then the husband owned them. And he had dominion over them, and he could do whatever. If it's like you're guilty of this, and so you can be whatever, and this is those things, and so they were considered that. And so you're sitting there going, wait a minute, okay? So this first century culture's hearing this, and they're thinking, yeah, but here's the reason why the verb is missing in Paul's letter. Because in the Greek writing, in those old manuscripts, you would go back to the verse before it, and the verb there would have been inferred in that verse. So let's go back to Ephesians 5:21, and let's see what is there. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. And in the oldest Greek manuscripts, it's there. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Now, here's the thing. Men had legal jurisdiction over wives and kids. It was their culture. So this idea of submitting to one another was radical. It's like, wait a minute. Are you hinting, Paul, that there could possibly be equality between men and women in the eyes of God? Okay? There it is. So don't run away. The first one who came up with the idea was Jesus. Okay? All right? Jesus is the one. Listen, first century women were demeaned and looked down upon him, and Jesus said, hey, here we go. All right? Listen, who came to the tomb first? We're getting ready to celebrate Easter. Who came to the tomb first? The women. Look, if you're going to make up a story about somebody being resurrected from the dead, the last thing you're going to do is say that women came, because they wouldn't even believe their testimony in court. So it's true. That's why you put it in there, because that was the truth. Jesus had more. He appeared to them first. You see, he taught equality before equality was even a thing. Okay? It was there even before it was a thing. And here's the thing. When we look at this, submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ, listen, look at what Christ did for you on your worst day. Okay? You got regrets. I know you do. We all do. And on that day, at that regret, in that moment, he forgave you. Okay? On that day, on your worst day, he forgave you. On your best day, he danced with you. He congratulated you. He encouraged you. When you were sick, he loved you. He cared for you. In good times, he loved you. In bad times, he loves you. Better, worse, sickness, health. Sound familiar? Submission is mutual. Submission is mutual. And that is why Christian marriage is a submission competition, because it is mutual submission, and it is biblical. Paul spelled it out for us, and we interpret it and we understand it in the backdrop of the command that Jesus gave us to love one another as he loved us. You owe me nothing. You owe me nothing. I owe you everything. I owe you everything because of Christ's love for me. I was dead in my sin and on my way to hell, and he saved me. He died for me. And above that, he owes me nothing, and I owe him everything for that. Isn't that a beautiful picture? It's a beautiful picture, and it's a picture of marriage. It's a picture of mutual submission. You owe me nothing. I owe you everything because of Christ's love for me. You see, we may have different hopes. We may have different dreams. We may have different desires, gifts, talents, but we don't have different value. We don't have different value to the eyes of God. We are equal. We are equal. Ephesians 5:22. Wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as to the Lord. But not because they deserve it. Okay? All right, I did a survey of women to see how many of them think that all their guys deserve that, and they come up 100% none. Okay? Not because they deserve it. Not because they deserve it. All right? God is asking you to submit to your husband's hopes, your husband's dreams, your husband's desires, and not because they deserve it. Okay? Because of what Christ did for you. And see, what came next in Paul's letter was so disruptive, and it was so shocking. Ephesians 5:25, he says this, husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. It's radical in the first century, man. What? What? Love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Wait a minute, I know how it ended for Jesus. I know how it worked out for him. It wasn't very pretty. Exactly. Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 28. In this same way then, guys, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. Why is this? Why did he say this? He who loves his wife loves himself. You are responsible to care for your wife as you do yourself, because you are one flesh. You are one flesh. And Paul understood this, and Jesus taught this. When you become married, you become one flesh. And Paul was hinting at this sense of equality that would have been, it was scandalous in the first century. This was just like, oh my gosh, what are you thinking about, dude? This was nearly scandalous in first century teaching. Our Western culture embraces the idea of equality of men and women. But this culture would have been like, no. Guess who came up with that idea? Jesus. Jesus came up with the idea. Jesus treated women with more respect than anyone ever had. In God's eyes, you are of equal value, and you are to submit one to another in a submission competition. How do you do this? Well, let's tell you, guys. You just have to decide. You just have to decide. She doesn't owe me anything, and I owe her everything. You just have to choose that. You just have to choose that she doesn't owe you anything, and you owe her everything. Ladies, you just have to decide. He doesn't owe me anything. He doesn't owe me anything, but I owe him everything. And it becomes a submission competition. Ephesians 5:21. Let's look at it one more time. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. You see, that's what oneness looks like in a relationship. Last week I challenged you with a question. What's in your box? I didn't really, maybe you started sharing that. I don't know if you did or not, but I challenged you for a reason. What's in your box? Because you really need to know that. And now this week's homework assignment is a little more risky, okay? Ask each other, okay? What's in your box? What's in your box? And listen, after you ask the question, stop talking and listen. Stop talking and listen. And guys, this is for you. This is you need to understand this. You need to know. She may be shocked. She may pass out, okay? Just help her up. Get her some water. All right? Ladies, you may ask, what's in your box? And he will give you the standard man answer. Nothing. Ain't nothing. Tournament start this week? Okay? Come on. Guys, listen. I'm going to challenge you here. All right? You may not talk about it a lot. You may be scared to talk about it. She may not know what's in your box. She may not know what's in your box, and you may not want to tell her what's in your box, but you're expecting her to fill it. And that's not fair. It's not fair. You're expecting her to fill what's in your box, and you're not willing to tell her. It's not fair. So you have to talk about it, because that will cause conflict. And the what's in your box question is an I'm all in kind of a question, because all of a sudden it's like, I want to know what it is, because you owe me nothing and I owe you everything, and I want to know what's in that box. Because what I'm saying is I'm going to run to the back of the line and I'm going to do everything I can to fill it. I'm going to do everything I can to meet it. And that's it's like, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can do that, because there's no telling, okay? There's no telling. When I find out what's in there, I don't know what it's going to be. He may never come home from work. I may never see him again. He may be on the lake forever. He may be in the woods forever. I don't know how much money she's going to spend. She may break me. I don't know. I'm afraid. I'm afraid. Listen. It's the first step. It's the first step to becoming a happy couple. I'm afraid she will. I'm afraid he won't. I'm afraid he'll start. I'm afraid she'll stop. But it's the only way forward, because this is what happens. Your whole relationship can become a tug of war over the things in your box. And what happens is you got hold of the rope over here, and she's got a hold of the rope over there, and you're pulling each other. And you've got yourself in a stance and you're laying back on it, and you can't give back any, because it's like, I'm not going to let you have any more than you're willing to give me, and I'm just going to strain through this. And it becomes a strain in the relationship. And this is the only way that you get there. The only way that you get there is you have to drop the rope. You have to drop the rope. And if you're a Christian, you're commanded to drop the rope first. Why is that? Why is that true? Because when you were dead in your sin, when you were dead in your trespasses, God, through Christ, dropped his end of the rope first. He dropped it first. He said, okay, I'll drop the rope, and I'm going here. All right? And I'll die for you. You have to be willing to let go. You have to be willing to go there first. And he did something for you whether you were ever able to respond to him or not. You understand that? He loved you. He took that risk. He said, look, I'm going to go to the cross. I'm going to die for your sins. And then I'm going to make a way for you to be in heaven with me forever. And you have to choose. And I'm just going to let go of the rope. I'm going to quit pulling on you. I'm going to let go of the rope and I'm going to go. And I'm going to ask that you choose me. Okay? And that's the gospel. That's love. That's love. That's how he loved you. He loved you so much that he died for you and he dropped his end of the rope. He did something for you whether or not you did anything in response to him. And it's risky, but it's real. It's real love. It is the gospel. Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 21. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. At the cross, God went first. And happy couples put each other first by going first in an effort to be last. And that's what happy couples know. And that's how you live happily ever after. The challenge for the week, just drop it. Just drop it. But what do I do with all my hopes and what do I do with all my dreams and what do I do with all my desires? Come back next week and I'll tell you. All right? Come back next week and I'll tell you. But today, put him first. All right? Put Jesus first in your life. All right? He went to the cross and expects nothing in return. And he's calling for you to come. He makes the opportunity. He lays it out there and says, here it is. And listen, you can't submit to each other the way you're supposed to unless you've submitted to Christ as the Lord of your life. When you've put him in first place, when you put him in charge, when you put him in control, when you let him have the lordship of your life, and then you understand that he owes you nothing, you owe him everything, and everything that you do is out of your love for him and what he did for you. When you can love people like that, you can love each other. You may not be in a relationship yet. You may not have even found your spouse for the future. You may not be in that place. But let me tell you, if you learn to love other people the way Jesus loved you, you're going to be a great spouse. You're going to be a great husband. You're going to be a great wife someday. It's going to be awesome because you understand it. You have it. And you won't take that box of expectations and hand it to somebody and say, here, fill it. You'll come and say, how can I be the best person for you? Selfless. But you have to put Christ first in your life. Let's pray. Father, we come before you this morning and we thank you for this ancient text, for this timeless teaching, that as you sat at the table with your disciples, that you were able to speak this command to them in a way that we can still, 2,000 years later, look at it, understand it, process it, and apply it to our lives, to our marriages. Father, this morning, I don't know where anyone is, but you know where everyone is. So, Father, help us to just submit to your lordship. Help us submit to your leadership in our lives. And, Father, help us to seek to be last. Help us to be first in line to be last in our relationships. Help us to go into a submission competition and understand the equality that you teach. And help us, Father, to love selflessly, to love the way you loved us through Christ. We pray now, Father, that we would respond and reflect as you call us. We ask it now in Jesus' name. Amen. Would you please stand?